is to find other people who love doing it and know more about it than you do. Sometimes those criticisms aren't necessarily right.
You know, it's a great idea, but it has to be educational.
Because that's like our future thinkers, and they're already thinking outside of the box.
All right, welcome back to the Green Room. This episode is a little bit different than normal. Instead of a interview of a guest artist or someone coming in to teach a class, we are going to interview our own staff and kind of have a little conversation about creativity in the process. So here today I have with me our graphic designer here at Studio 128, Josh Allred. Introduce yourself.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm Josh. I started working over at the studio here about a couple months ago, just during the summer between semesters, studying at Eastern Arizona College for an associate's degree in graphic design. Excited to be here.
I just kind of want to know, what got you into, I don't know, being creative in general? Were you creative as a kid, or was it maybe a later love for it?
Well, I suppose the first experiences with creativity, it was a means to entertain myself during long hours of church, sitting there trying to figure out what to do, and I'd draw little stick figures having battles, and the helicopters coming and bombing the little people, and I kind of just fell in love with drawing, grew up drawing, and just was extremely excited to see self-improvement and to see something that I created and could be proud of. And my uncle was a really big influence in that as well. He's a web developer, and I hung out a lot with him growing up. And I remember watching him do homework, and he would have to draw and do artistic stuff for homework for the school he was going to. And I was like, that doesn't look like work. That looks like fun. I want to do that when I get older. And yeah, I guess that's kind of where it started.
Like when you're really young, I feel like every kid kind of draws and colors. It's just sort of the situation when you're young. You just kind of doodle and paint with colors and whatever. And when I was really young, I was always like, I would be doodling nonstop. Like my hand was always half covered in graphite, from like the page and everything. And I would always tell myself and my mom and everyone, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be an artist for a living when I get older. And at the time, I don't think I really knew what that meant. I just thought, I'd sit in a big room and draw all day and people just give me money. That's how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, as I got older, like the love for art and drawing never really went away, but then like other interests definitely took over. And eventually, I guess it came full circle, but interesting starts. What were some of your big influences growing up and even now? Like, what do you take artistic influence from?
Well, I guess growing up and leisurely for art, I was a big medieval nerd. I remember when I was young, my mom asked me what I want to be when I grow up, and I told her I wanted to be a knight.
Hey, I mean, good luck.
It's possible. I mean, I don't maybe go to some medieval fair or something, joust, I don't know. But and so I was always drawing, guys in shining armor slaying magical beasts and stuff. And even now, like when I draw knights and like heroes and stuff, and just the fantasy world, the escape, I guess, that exists there inspires art for me. And that's more leisurely. I can find inspiration in a lot of things when I'm doing it for work. Like those posters I did recently for the live events drew inspiration just from the architecture of the actual theater next door. Just looking at the world around us, can bring inspiration.
No, yeah, for sure. I usually I kind of try to take in from every possible source, every direction, whether it's like artists I follow or things that I think just look neat, that I feel like a lot of other people kind of look over. And I would say that's a huge difference between someone who I guess is actively pursuing creativity and someone who, I don't know, I would say a normal person. Like that was somehow we're like a different species or anything. But more creative people, I would say, like we do notice like different nuances in small things that I guess a lot of other people look over. Like, I mean, the theater is kind of hard to miss. Like, it's a very unique structure, especially on the Avenue. But to look at it and then say, like, well, this makes me think of this, or this makes me feel this, then you can, recreate it in your own way. I mean, you literally did recreate it, which, okay, for any of our listeners, if you see our 2019-2020 guest artist season, the posters on there are magnificent. Oh my gosh, the framing, great. I absolutely love it. So, what are your creative goals? What do you set out to do?
I'd like to just experience some variety. That's why I'm going to school for an associate's in graphic design. It was almost on a whim, honestly. sounded cool,
Yeah.
something that I enjoy doing, so I wanted to pursue it. I also have thought about pursuing web design. I've thought about teaching, writing. That's something that I've pursued a little bit leisurely, nothing big, but something that I would feel like would be awesome. Just to be able to do something that I feel like people can appreciate and that I can appreciate, that I can be proud of doing.
When you create stuff, when it's for work, obviously, it's marketing, it's for other people, clearly.
Yeah.
But when you create kind of like for yourself, are you the type of person that kind of likes to rush out and show, being like, hey, look what I made? Or do you keep a lot of it to yourself?
Probably a little bit of both. Whenever I am drawing anything, usually my sister gets like a step-by-step process of my artwork.
Yeah.
Because I think it's cool, and she's into some of the same stuff, and we get to bounce ideas off of each other, and it's kind of a process together, which is fun. It's a fun thing to be able to share what you've made with other people, especially if they are into it. And so I do that, but other than that, it's kind of just something that is for me. It's almost like therapeutic. When I draw, usually I don't go with a project in mind. I just start drawing and see what happens.
So I have another question. This is going to be a big one, so I want you to think about it. At your current position in your creative journey, like, would you say you've kind of just started? It's early beginnings, I guess, at least in the graphic design stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I have one semester of college, and my first 2 months into the first graphic design job I've ever held. It's pretty early.
Yeah, it sounds like you're a pro. So let's say 5 years from now, you look back on this and you have one thing you wish you could tell yourself. What do you think future you 5 years from now would give you advice for?
The only thing I can think of, the biggest thing would probably be more practice, especially in college. You have your basic assignments to teach you the concepts, and you can feel like you know in your head, I get the idea, but you can't be proficient until you actually practice it.
Yeah.
And that's been really cool about this job and doing those flyers and actually applying what I learned about Adobe InDesign, because the things that I designed in college, I aced my classes, but my designs were garbage compared to what I'm designing now, which are still not, it's my first 2 months, but even just putting some practice in has been really helpful. And so maybe just more of that.
More just like creating for the sake of creating.
Yeah, like not worrying so much about, is it worth it to spend my time doing this? What's the practical purpose? Well, the practical purpose is the long run, is making something and practicing until you can become proficient enough to be really proud of what you can make.
So, okay, then how about any advice for someone in your current path? Let's say like they're just also getting into design. Maybe like they didn't start last semester, they're going to start this semester or next year. Like they're just graduating or something. From your current experience of going through this for a semester and then 2 months of work, can you pass on to someone now getting started?
The thing that comes immediately to mind is to find other people who love doing it and know more about it than you do, because that's been a great help to me. I've been blessed to have been able to go to a college community surrounded by students who were interested in it, loved doing it, professors who were interested in it, loved doing it, and taught that to their students. And now at a job where I'm surrounded by coworkers like you, Wesley, and Amanda, and Isaac, who love what they're doing and know more about it than I do. And so I'm able to learn from those people around me.
It is always the greatest thing to be the worst one in the room. I wouldn't say worst one, but just like the less experienced one in the room. Because even when I grew up skating, like amongst the other skaters I was friends with, I was a complete novice compared to them. Like they were like doing stuff my body physically couldn't imagine how they were moving their feet to do the tricks they were doing.
Yeah.
And then after a couple months hanging out with them, I was doing those same tricks. So yeah, learning amongst other people is so much easier than learning by yourself. But when you're surrounded with someone who, like, if they've been doing it for a year and you've been doing it for 6 months, just remove the ego that maybe you might have it in your pocket and just let them teach you stuff. Asking for help is cool. So let's say someone leaves a criticism, and criticisms, I mean, I would say are maybe inherently negative, because there's positive criticisms, but those are mostly compliments. So if someone says, I don't like X, how do you deal with that?
Preference is a part of some criticism, and it's something that we talked about in college. Is sometimes when you're working for a client or when you're working to please a crowd, those criticisms aren't necessarily right.
Yeah.
They could be opinion. Well, of course, you're under the gun if you are working for a client because they're paying you to make it the way they want to.
So thank you, Josh, so much for sitting down and talking with me. If anyone wants to see any of his designs, come to all of our events and look at all our marketing because they're all great. But for the summer, at least, he's going to be working with us and making a lot of the print material and graphic design stuff. Thank you for listening to The Green Room. We'll be back next time with maybe an interview, maybe a conversation, maybe just 45 minutes of silence. We'll see you then.